is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 229 and 230. In these episodes, we reach Water 7. Strange name for a strange place. It looks like a giant fountain. There's a sea train. Honestly, I'm pretty into this place already. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. What's up, Florian? Hey guys, I'm sorry. I said it was Florian, and apparently Florian booked it. But I should credit Michael, it says in the instructions. So apologies, Michael, that I did not give you credit off the top, but you are being acknowledged. So thank you, Michael. Appreciate you a lot. Seraphim says, always ready for what we are getting into. Water 7 remains the place in One Piece world I most would love to visit. Huh, okay. I still feel like Cloud City, or Clouds, is that what, that's not what you call it. Cloud City is the Star Wars place. Skypiea, I would really want to visit a place where furniture is literally made out of clouds. However, the whole vibe of this place is very Venice-y. And I find that, like, it's the kind of thing where I'm simultaneously thinking that's very appealing, but also aware that the water is, like, disgusting and you just shouldn't touch it. And I can't get that out of my head. So I kind of go back and forth on that. But before we get there, our friends are still getting, like, run down, essentially, by a train that goes over the water, the sea train. And what it turns out is simply that there are tracks laid just under the water. So it looked like the train was running on water, and that is not actually what was happening. And I have to confess a little bit of disappointment because I really thought we were going to get something sort of extra fantastical. And that is not to say that a train that's, like, running through water isn't, but, you know, it's just a little bit more on the realistic side. And I was thinking that maybe we were going to get something that was, like, truly wild. You know, we just had a dude who could, like, ride his bike on water because he'd made the water into ice. So I kind of thought maybe we would have something like that. And all of them are desperately trying to get the ship out of the way. But as is brought up later on, the Going Merry is not in awesome shape. It's having a hard time keeping up, and I really felt for it. It's doing its best, you know? But we do see later on, at one point, Zoro is just, like, pulling on some ropes, some rigging, and the whole mast just comes down, and everybody's like, what did you do? And he's like, I just did what I always do. And we're really lucky we were able to even make it here, considering the ship is in this kind of shape. But they get it out of the way. And then we see this fucking frog. That frog that was doing the front crawl. And he is standing right on the track in front of the train. And everybody is just kind of, like, honestly more agitated about him getting hit by the train than I was expecting. This frog almost sank, you guys. Like, I get that Luffy wants to eat him, but I was kind of thinking Luffy wanted to eat him also because he seems just like an enemy. And everyone being really sad, it seemed, that he got hit by the train, I was sort of surprised by. As it turns out, this frog is kind of, I was going to say badass, but that feels too generous, because as the little girl points out later, what do you think it's like for everybody who was on the train? But yeah, he is somebody who is like a bit of a daredevil, I suppose you could say. And he like goes and jumps in front of the train on purpose. And I suppose just doesn't really give a shit about any of the people, because why would he when he was out here capsizing ships and stuff? I guess it's consistent with his character that he really wouldn't fucking care if he injures anyone. So they're standing there watching the train disappearing in the distance, catching their breath after this like very close call. And then we see a little girl walk out onto the porch of the sort of station that's set up. And the little girl is named Chimney, which is really weird. And she has a pair of pigtails that stick straight up off her head in like if Pippi Longstocking got electrocuted sort of fashion. And a very tiny, like, little lipped mouth, like a real Cupid doll. It looks like she's wearing lipstick, but I don't think that's supposed to be the intention. It's just, I think, how her face is. And her grandmother comes out and tells her to get the transponder snail. And her grandmother has hair that is similar. It is not quite as energetic, much bushier, but it still has the same general sort of shape. And a very tall, weird-shaped hat that looks like a light bulb. It's like if a light bulb was spray-painted black, kind of. And this lady is a disaster. As soon as she's like, get the transponder, and I hear her talking, I'm like, oh no. And then she's walking really unsteadily. And she picks up the transponder and then is like, hello, who is this? Nope, wrong number. And like hangs up on them because she is so drunk that she doesn't even remember what it was that she was going to make the call for. And what she was going to make the call for was the fact that there are pirates here. So, yeah, this lady has a drinking problem. Immediately when she gets fed pie, she's like talking about how good it is with booze. And essentially, she seems unconcerned with the fact that they're pirates as long as they are not train robbers. Pretty much, if they're not here to fuck with her shit, she does not care, which I really do sympathize with. Let's see. Seraphim says, named Yokozuna, Oda can be both extremely subtle at times and also just totally in your face. Is Yokozuna... I'm not sure what that is. Like, you're saying that with subtle at times and totally in your face as if that is a reference to something that's really obvious, and apologies, but I don't know the reference. So if it is not subtle, I'm not the one to get it, I guess. Gus says also her cat that just looks like a rabbit, Gonby. Yeah, this cat isn't a cat, right? Like, really what I took from this was that this drunk woman has been calling this rabbit a cat, and the little girl, who is too little to know better, just went, yeah, all right, it's a cat, because that's what I've been told by this adult who knows better, and accepted that. And so one day this little girl may actually find out what a cat looks like and be extremely confused. But I don't know. Oh, okay. Seraphim says Yokozuna is the frog's name and also the highest rank a sumo wrestler can achieve. Okay. Oh, and Gus earlier, sumo wrestler frog. Okay. Did not get that. I didn't even really know about like the ranks of sumo wrestlers being a thing at all, to be perfectly honest. And why would I? Gus says, I think so. I'm pretty sure Chimney calls it a cat because it meows. Christ. So, yeah, she's actually like somewhat friendly and tries to help them. But as it turns out, her help is not actually real helpful because she is so drunk that when she tries to draw them a map and draw like a picture of a guy that they need to be looking for. I could not help but think, even if she wasn't drunk, guys, if your friends needed to like find your parent and you tried to draw a picture of your mom, how good is that gonna be? Like, I'm just thinking they were seemingly expecting a photorealistic drawing here, and I am not a bad artist, and I'm not going to be able to do anything accurate or helpful at all. So, you know, and the train, it turns out, is called the Puffing Tom, according to the subtitles. I don't recall if that's actually the way it's said in the actual dub. But she says it turns paddle wheels using steam and it runs on the rail. And we get to find out about how it like travels the same route all the time. It's like basically a tram. And it carries mail and like packages and stuff. So that's what they like ran ashore on, was the tracks. And all of them are kind of frustrated by the fact that there are these signals that are intended to warn people not to cross, but they're not labeled. There's nothing to actually tell them what the danger is. And Luffy points out that they're kind of not pointing in the right direction to help anyone who isn't already aware of what they do, which I have to agree with. And, yeah, she says, oh, you don't have to worry about Yokozuna. He's really tough. He loves strength contest and always tries to defeat the sea train. And of course, Luffy is immediately impressed by this and is like, oh, well, then I'm not going to eat him because he sounds like he's actually kind of a macho, cool guy. And I got so saddened here, you guys, because they start talking about places that they can go. And there's a mention of the Gourmet Island that I think the guys that they were on the previous island that they like helped escape, they had mentioned. I was so hopeful that they were going to wind up going, y'all. Pucci, that's the name of it. The Gourmet Town Pucci. The Carnival Town San Faldo. They're all fun places. And if you work for the government, there's a separate special train. And it's even fancier. So yeah, the Gourmet Town, I'm like, of course they're going to want to go there because Luffy is all about food. And this is, I mean, that's like a given, you know? And he starts to pick that, but then Nami says, well, we'll just follow the log. We don't need to take the train because, you know, we're not going to dump it here. And what is the name of this lady? I can't remember her name. She says, well, then you'll probably be going to Water 7 if your log is saying east. And she's like, and that's not bad either. It's a city of water and it's a pretty nice place. And it's got a really dope shipyard. Pretty much famous for that. And they build all of the ships for the government and everything. And they're just like really renowned. And Luffy then is like, okay, you know what? You won me over because we really do have a lot of work that we need to get done to the Going Merry. So I suppose this makes sense. Let's see. I do love Granny Kokoro. That's right. Thank you guys. She is the best kind of I give no fucks anymore old lady. Seraphim says they could still take the train from Water 7 to all these other places. I hope that they go to Pucci. Look, everybody, I am going to tell you guys something that will surprise fucking nobody at all, okay? But when I'm planning a trip and I have no real like particular destination in mind, like I'm not going there for the Universal Studios Park, for example, which is a very specific spot I want to be near. the first thing I find out is where the food district is. And I try to be as close to that as I can, because that's the best part for me of traveling, in combination with seeing sights. And not everywhere even has sights to see that are really like accessible. Like tasting the food of the region is the thing. So when I was planning my honeymoon with Owen, we chose the island that we stayed on based on the review of the food in the area. And I'm already in the midst of, this is top secret, so don't anybody say anything. You won't, because you don't know my mom. But some of you might run into her on my Facebooks if you're friends with me. I have a whole like little plan going on to take a trip with my mom, Owen, and my stepdad, Jim, through Europe, like a train trip. Because it turns out, if you don't know, you guys, you can buy one train pass that's good for like, I think 15 trips within 2 months and go anywhere you want. And it's just the one price flat for everywhere, as long as you don't pass 15 trips. And it's like 2.5 hours from London to Paris, 2.5 hours from Paris to like Switzerland, I think it was. It is wild. And every single one of those that I have been looking at, I'm just like, yeah, but where's the food at though? Like, where's someplace good to eat? I want to know. And especially because we were thinking we're going in like December, gonna do some of those sweet like Christmas like festival markets things as well. Super excited because I've already found out what some of the like traditional Christmas street food is, and it is wild, some of the stuff. So anyway, y'all know I really want to go to Pucci, and I really want, what I'm worried about is that if we go to Pucci, it's going to be like a filler arc, and it's going to be awesome, and it's going to have Sanji doing his like chef thing, and it's not going to be part of the actual coverage because it's not actually important to anything. So, you know, either way, if we go, I'll be like glad we've gone, because I want to see what they would do with this. But last time Sanji had like a great food arc, it was a filler thing, and I was super sad about it. So I'm just saying, I am still, it's on my mind. So yeah, they start talking about like getting a shipwright and all the work that needs to be done. And Luffy says something about he wants to get the best shipwright, one that's like 16 feet tall. And Sanji is saying, don't worry, everybody, I'll get the hottest shipwright there is. Which it appears every shipwright is a dude, as far as I've seen. So I would be very curious to put Sanji to the test and see whom he decides is the hottest of the shipwrights. Because there are a couple lookers. I'm not gonna lie, there's a couple shipwrights that I was like, all right, he could get it. So she tells them to find this guy named Iceberg and ask him to fix up the ship. She says, it's a big place, don't get lost. And she also like writes a reference letter for them, which is delightful. This is something that's sort of out of style, of course, now, because it's not really necessary the same way. But in bygone eras, you know, back in like the 20s, turn of the century, people who were going to be traveling would have a letter of reference to indicate to a person that they were someone that their friend whom they trusted was familiar with, and thus, you know, accepting them into their home as a guest or entertaining them was like not just taking in a stranger. And it makes total sense to do it that way, but it's so formal sounding that it really feels like getting a job interview, you know, like sending a resume. And I was sort of thinking how funny that was. And then I was talking to Rashawn about online dating the other day, and how both of us are kind of relieved that we haven't had to dip our toe in that too much. And I was thinking, if I ever started dating again, I would just create an application, and dudes would have to fill it out in order for me to even consider talking to them. And if they aren't willing to fill it out, that's totally fair, but I won't talk to you. You have to at least do that. And otherwise, then that's a really great way to just weed a ton of people out right off the top. And then you ask questions, and depending on their answers, you can get a pretty good idea on whether or not this is something that you want to bother with. So I acted like that other thing was like way too formal and kind of over the top. And now I'm starting to come back around again and be like, yeah, you know what? I don't want my time wasted by a fucking weirdo stranger. So yeah, I think we should bring this back. Have like officially, I am vouching for this person on paper. So, they take off, and this whole family is yelling after them, watch out for the government people. Fucking Luffy yells, let's go to the city of meat, because he's already forgetting. He's like me. He really wants Poochie in his heart. That's what he wants. So they're sailing and discussing what they're going to do when they get there. And I love what it turns out they want to do. And I wasn't ready for this, y'all. I didn't get it. I'm thinking they just straight up want a shipwright to fix their ship, but they want a shipwright to join their crew. Now look, I'm not saying that's out of the question, but I'm feeling like we've got the crew we want. If we're going to add somebody, they better be damn interesting. I wasn't even really that interested in adding Nico Robin, and I'm still kind of on the fence about her, to be honest. Like, I don't have a problem with her, but as of right now, I don't really feel much toward her except curiosity. She has held so much back, and I respect the fact that the crew is willing to just let her tell her story at her own pace, if ever. I really appreciate that about them. But as a viewer, I really thought we would know more by now than we do. The time that it is taking to like let any bits of her history dribble out, it's kind of taking too long. So were we to bring on a new crew member, I would really kind of want things with Nico Robin to be resolved by then. And by resolved, I don't mean necessarily like, you know, any of her enemies that she had need to be vanquished. I just mean I want to know what her fucking deal is. Because clearly she was up to some shit. And I feel like you bring on a new person into this crew, and they find out after joining up that she has a sordid history and nobody's asked anything about it. That person, I wouldn't imagine, is gonna take that super well. Like, I wouldn't, you know? I would be going into it assuming everyone knows and trusts each other, and finding out that Robin is sort of an outlier, they do seem to trust her, despite everything. And I feel like I said this in that episode, but like, I understand the message that we're trying to give, that the past is the past. It shouldn't matter. She's our friend, so don't talk shit about her to us. We don't want to hear it. And I respect the thought, but personally, I don't see really all that much that she has done to be their friend. She has been a decent partner in all of this. Like, they've gone through a lot of adventures and she's mostly been there backing them up, but she has tended to be off on her own most of the time. And it's not like she's totally ditching them or anything. I'm not trying to say that, but she has her own interests and goals. And I just don't really feel like there's been any connection made that justifies them calling her a friend. And maybe that's kind of my problem. But I'm curious what y'all thought about her at this point. Because I'm still just kind of firmly in the... I mean, I don't have a problem with her, but I don't know her very well. And her personality is so... I'm trying to think of the word. Because the word I keep kind of coming back to is tepid. And I don't feel like that's really fair because it makes it sound like she's boring. But what I mean is she is so even-keeled most of the time. She doesn't really have a lot of like reactions to things. The only thing I know about her personality is that she is very protective of like, you know, anthropological finds and archaeology and whatnot. And she has a history that obviously this like one particular government agent was able to get under her skin real bad. Otherwise, I don't really know anything about her likes and dislikes in a way that makes me feel like I connect with her either. So I appreciate in theory everybody being like, yeah, she's our friend. But my response was just, is she? Why? Like, how is she your friend? Every time that we have like somebody needs to be rescued, it always just kind of feels like she's along for the ride, but she's never the one spearheading the thing. Like, we can't leave them behind. And really kind of being aggro about protecting them as friends. Unless she has, and I'm just forgetting those moments. But, so anyway, all that to say, adding a new crew member, I don't have a problem with it in principle. But I don't feel ready for it as a viewer right now. Because we just added her, it feels like. And I know it wasn't just. It's been a minute since we added her. But it feels like we just added her. Because I don't feel like I have gotten any further info about her, really. Hi, Brian. Seraphim says, I have the feeling that is more or less the attitude about her Oda was going for at this point. Willing to trust her and believing the crew trusts her, but also suspicious about how much we really do not know about her. And Gus is seconding that. Okay. And like I said, I appreciate them sticking up for her. I also buy that Chopper would be like, she's our friend. Because Chopper just does that. Chopper is just too trusting, frankly. Like, down to the point where it's gullibility. But, yeah, if they are going to bring on an additional crew member, I am going to need that to be pretty compelling for me to get behind it as like, and I think it's a good idea in general. We've got, you know, I've talked about them in terms of like a D&D party before, and having a healer is incredibly important where they got Chopper, but a healer for the ship is not a bad plan. This ship has taken so many beatings, and I have expressed before that maybe they should just straight up get a new ship. I have gotten to the point where I don't think that's ever going to happen. If it does, I have to assume it's going to be a big deal. But yeah, I mean, I see their need, and I think it's like a fair plan. But as a viewer, I just kind of feel like I'm still getting used to this other one, and I don't know that I want to keep mixing it up anymore. So they finally see Water 7 on the horizon. And this place looks crazy. It's like a giant tiered cake. Like a wedding cake, kind of. With a huge fountain at the very top. And the water coming down sluices through all of these open gates on either side. And there's like chutes that carry the water down like water slides. Which, of course, Luffy wants to ride on. And rightfully, Chopper is imagining going down one of these and how out of control he would be. And it's just like, no, you know what? I'll pass. Never mind. And I have to agree. I went to a water slide exactly once since like gaining a substantial amount of weight. And I'll tell you what, kids, they do not talk enough about how much gaining weight adds to the velocity of going down one of these chutes. But I came out of this shit like a fucking bullet. and it was unsafe, and I would never do it again. It was terrifying. And I love too how much Luffy wants to do this, and Zoro is like, dude, you can't even swim. And Luffy's like, oh shit, right. And there's numbers on each one of these like gate areas, and they're all wondering what the gate numbers mean. And I found myself laughing because I look at the gate numbers and, like a fucking real grown-up boring person, my immediate assumption was, well, you know, they label the gates so that maintenance has an easier time figuring out which ones they need to go and deal with. And, like, if maybe that's it. I doubt it. But what a boring assumption. You guys, when did I turn into this person? I just miss the days where that kind of like, that explanation would not have been the first thing that I would have jumped to. But anyway, so yeah, Luffy is talking about how it's probably like the numbers correspond with the height of the shipwrights and stuff. It's like, So they start coming up towards this place and they run into a fisherman. And he says, you pirates really shouldn't be sailing in through the front. You've got to be more discreet. Go around through the back over there. And I was fully expecting this to be a trap and was surprised they were like immediately, oh, okay, guy, thanks for the advice. And just listened to what he told them. And as it all continues on, it gets more and more strange. And it took such a long time for anybody to reference it. Eventually, I think it's Usopp that says that. But everybody is so friendly that I started to wonder if this was like the, what was the name of everybody who worked for Crocodile? All of those people. You remember that island they went to and the people act so happy to see them and get them totally drunk, and the whole intention is like to lure them in. But that's sort of what I was wondering if we were going to see. And they're gliding through, and the place is so pretty, honestly. It's like Baroque works. Thank you, Gus. What this town sort of reminds me of is the build I'm doing currently for Animal Crossing, where I'm trying to make sort of like a European city vibe. And there's just a lot of cafes, a lot of like boutique shops. It's all meant to be very picturesque, lots of outdoor seating, and just in general, there's a feeling to it of almost being too good to be true. And the suggestions that they're getting that seem so helpful, they're a little bit puzzled because nobody seems worried about the fact that they're pirates. And I think it's Zoro. I don't remember. Somebody suggests they probably just have the security to deal with pirates because it's like a pretty big city. So they don't. Maybe that's the only reason, and there's nothing to actually be suspicious of. But this is the moment where Zoro pulls the whole mast down, and they realize we really need a shipwright like ASAP. So Nami says, all right, everybody, gather round, and I am going to give you your allowances, and then we are going to go into town, but some of you do have to stay with the ship. I was so relieved, you guys, when Nico Robin brings Chopper into town with her, because Chopper gets left behind all the time. And I'm sick of this. I'm sick of it. So very grateful for her to at least show Chopper a good time and have him like do just a little sightseeing. It results in Zoro and Sanji being stuck on the ship with each other, which I frankly have no problem with. Good. You deserve each other. Gus says, I have attempted to build Water 7 in Minecraft once. It was super hard to get the massive scale right, so I kind of gave up. I can understand how that would be. sure that there are folks out there doing One Piece builds on their islands, because there was, did I post this in the Discord? I can't remember. In Animal Crossing, you can write messages on people's bulletin boards, and you can write it like using the sensor on the front of the Switch, so it's in your handwriting, or the janky version of your handwriting that electronics translated into. And I was visiting someone's island, and they had a bunch of strangers coming and going, and there was a postcard on their bulletin board that just said "Watch One Piece" in all caps. And it was funny, because if I saw that before I had started covering it, I would have no idea what they were talking about, because One Piece does not sound like the title of something. It just doesn't. So I'd have been like, watch One Piece of what? What are you talking about? I would have been so confused. And I didn't even see it until maybe it was only a couple weeks after I started covering it. So that is kind of making me curious, Gus, to go out and look for some One Piece Animal Crossing builds. I was trying to put together a Luffy outfit, because they have a plain straw hat with a red band, and it looks just like his. And I saw that and was like, oh shit, maybe I could put a whole thing together. I would have to design the top, though, and pants. And they don't really let you design pants, I don't think. It would have to be a pretty carefully put together custom design, which probably is already out there. But anyway, okay. So Usopp and Luffy are thinking that they're just going to run off with their allowances. And Nami is like, sirs, the whole reason that we are here is to find this iceberg guy. So we're going to take care of that first. And we also need to cash in the gold. Which I kind of appreciated this, because I feel like so much of the time in fiction, people will just find a bunch of gold and then they'll just trade it. And I never know how much of a piece of gold I should trade for a thing. It's always felt like you're just guessing and probably getting ripped off more often than not. So the fact that they're essentially going to go and sell it to get regular money, I just appreciated that as a practicality. It made me feel better. They're going to get their berries and it's going to be easier to deal with. So Luffy is resentful of the fact that they don't want to trust him with the gold. And I really appreciated the argument that they have, where they're both like, yeah, of course we don't trust you. You literally started to walk away without it just now. But they're walking in, and they're sort of worried about whether or not anybody's going to try and rob them. And essentially, the thing has to be kept secret so that nobody knows it's gold. It could be anything. But of course, the first chance he gets, Luffy immediately tells somebody that it's all gold and opens it and shows it to him. And I was just going, sir, why? Why would you do? He's such a dodo bird. Oh my God. So they pull up to this only entrance, rental bull shop. And what it turns out these are the bulls. That is the name for these little fish. Now, I say little, they're quite large. But I found it funny that when it says bull, they ask, what's a bull? And Usopp thinks about a bulldog. He knows what a bulldog is, but he doesn't know just what a bull is, which I found really strange. But yeah, they are going to put essentially a giant saddle on the backs of these sort of Nessie looking sea monsters. And the sea monsters seem to really enjoy it. They genuinely look like they're having a great time. They have little bridles on, and kind of, their manes are all combed up. I guess it's a fin, really, but it looks like a mane. And the way that there's seating in them, they come in all different sizes depending on the size of your party and everything. I love this so much. I really do. There's something about this that I find delightful. So, of course, Luffy shows them all the gold and he tries to completely overcharge them, but they wind up being, able to just pay what he said initially. And they ask about cashing this gold out, and he, again, with a smile on his face the whole time, which makes me just kind of, what is your deal, guy? Says there's a good chance that any place you try and cash out, that amount of gold is completely going to clean them out. So I don't think that you'll be able to do just one place, but you probably want to go to this like downtown shopping district, and here is a map for you to take. So they head down this way, and this episode, like the first one, ends with them like heading out. But when we pick up the next one, they are like going down towards the shopping district in a direction that they weren't expecting, and they think that these like bulls are screwing with them, but it turns out they actually just knew a shortcut and brought them a faster way. Now, I have to say, I'm just putting it together that everybody that's been smiling at them, and also the bulls are smiling at them, I'm starting to wonder about the smiles, guys. Like, is this something? I'm kind of, I don't know I don't know if that's anything, but it's starting to kind of make me wonder a little bit, I guess. There's also a weird thing where a dude leans out the window and tries to like flirt with Nami, and then later on when Robin is walking through, she gets a ton of attention from guys who were talking about what a once-in-a-lifetime beauty she is. And for a minute, I was sort of like, are there just no women here? But we see women around. So I'm very curious about what the deal is here. There's something going on, clearly. But yeah, let's see, where are you going? Sightseeing to the shipyard. We're going to have our ship repaired. And he says, then go to the backstreet shopping district first. And behind him, this guy does a checkmate. And I'm I guess that moment where he gets checkmated, he's not smiling. It's just, I don't know, it's suspicious. I'm just suspicious a little bit, I guess. So this is when they like do the whole fucking run down the rapids thing. And the moment where they're in the air and Nami is just yelling, we're falling, we're falling, we're falling, we're falling. Oh my God. There is too much falling from a great height in this show. It honestly gets me very agitated. But they wind up in the shopping district, which is quite crowded. And there's a lot of food, which of course gets Luffy really excited. And coming down the middle of this big canal is a huge... they're thinking it might be another version of the bull. It's just like a bigger one. It is alive, but it doesn't really look it to me because it barely moves the whole time. So I thought that it was just a sort of float or a ship carved to look a certain way. It finally does move, but initially I was just kind of like thinking that this was a weird, I don't know, procession, like something for a parade, you know? But anyway, it passes by them. It has its mouth open the whole time, which is kind of tying in with this weird smile thing. And they look up, and there's a bunch of folks sitting in the saddle, so to speak, of this giant one. And they are all wearing really formal, like, party clothing that looks almost antique. And masks that are very elaborately painted, and they're really pretty. Like, the look of what they're doing is quite striking and really cool. But they all have like hats and headdresses and everything on to a degree that I was like, are those actually even people? Like, it could just be a statue under there. They don't move at all. We eventually do see people walking who have these masks on, but they're way taller than anybody else on the street. So I don't know what to make of this, but the masks are a recurring thing. And like, that's a thing in Venice. Clearly they're doing like a whole Venice thing here, of course. The Venetian masks, they're like a really popular souvenir because that's a thing there. I've always found them kind of not only creepy, but like kind of ugly because they have, I think it's black, red, and white are the most common colors that they're painted with, which I just don't really like that color combination. But I had a friend, or my dad had a friend when I was little, and she collected these and she had them all over her house, and I found them to be so unsettling. Just these like empty eyes looking down at you, and some of them are painted to be kind of like grinning in a way that's really off-putting and just gives you a sense of like it kind of leering at you behind your back. Do not care for it. So anyway, Luffy gets distracted by this food, and the bull drags him off to one of the booths in particular, and it turns out that they're selling a type of food that these guys especially really like. It's like their favorite. And Luffy buys a bunch, and I thought he was going to give some to this guy, and he doesn't. He doesn't give the Agara anything. He just eats it and holds on to it. And when Usopp says that he wants some, Luffy says he's not going to share. But I thought for sure that this little guy would have some. He's looking at Luffy in such distress, like he was hoping to get some. And it's not happening for him, and I just felt so bad. So anyway, this is when we go to the shipyard. And this was really fun because we hear from some people in town, oh, hey, there are some pirates that are causing trouble. We're going to need to go and deal with that. And we cut to the shipyard and we see this pirate who's extremely tall, and he's wearing a weird hat with like a crescent moon on the front of it that's like kind of popping up off the top of it. And essentially he's telling this guy, thanks for all of the repairs you did on our ship, but we decided we're not going to pay for it. And when he says that they're not going to pay for it, the guy he's speaking to, who is a blonde with like a beard, this dude has no real reaction at all. And that was my first clue that this is not a man to be fucked with. He doesn't have any response. He doesn't get mad. There's just a sense of like, you're wasting my time. And anybody who reacts to being provoked with that kind of attitude is somebody who's probably pretty dangerous and can handle his shit. So I was already going, pirates, y'all are kind of making a mistake. And then we hear that dun 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 dun, and then we see these two walk up, one of whom is Iceberg, the man that we are looking for. The other is a woman whose name I don't remember, Khalifa. And Khalifa is wearing, we're going to do a little bit of a little fashion thing here. She is wearing a, what looks like kind of a yellow blazer with a collar that one might call popped, except it's not really. It's just a really tall collar. She's got her hair back in, I think, a bun with like a green headband. Overall, her look is fairly subdued. And she is with Iceberg, who has a maroon and like pale pink, I hesitate to say pink, but I'm going to say it, striped suit with a red shirt. And he has an undercut, is sort of the kind of headset hairstyle that he's got going on, and his hair is purple. He looks like he's wearing lipstick. He's got really, really red lips, like dark red, that almost match the stripes on his suit. And he has a little mouse or gerbil or something in his pocket that he just sort of like pets absently as they are discussing what's going on here. And we get a really, really weird line. He asks her, Khalifa, what's going on over here? And she says they're the customers for Dock 1. Now that the work has been completed, they won't pay. that's sexual harassment. And he says, well, that is sexual harassment. What? What is that? What is happening? It is not sexual harassment in any form. Is the joke supposed to be that it's absolutely not? Or is that... I can't imagine that's just a translation thing, because that is like... They would never just go with that translation. If it just... I'm just going to assume that this is part of the joke, that like they're assigning this crime with the totally wrong title. But it was quite distracting in the moment. I will just say that. So they are standing around and watching all of this. And I'm thinking that they are going to be here to like enforce whatever the laws are of this region. And instead, these pirates are continuing to sort of fuck with the shipwrights, giggle amongst themselves. And then the captain gets bashed in the back of the head with a huge log that somebody is carrying. And they do that thing where they like look over and go, oh, sorry. And then another guy, because they're still thinking that it's an accident, another guy comes in from behind with a giant, and I'm talking like what looks to be a 12-foot long saw, and bashes another dude and says, oh, pardon me. And then we get this dude with a hammer who, this man, his eyes look like they glowed for a second. I don't know what's happening there, but he has a hammer and tattoos. A lot of these dudes are shirtless, which I am totally fine with, for the record. But he comes through like extremely quickly and essentially gets 4 dudes in the face, it looks like, in one shot. The guy with the saw, by the way, looks like he has a really long square nose, which is kind of odd. And then there's a dude who's got a look to him that sort of reminds me of oh my God, Hawkeye, right? That is his name. He has like a similarly over the top kind of beard style, and the really like thin slitted eyes that are meant to make him look mysterious and whatnot. And we just see him like look over, and we don't actually see him do anything. But the next thing we know, there are 4 men like flying through the air. And it is just no contest whatsoever. All of these pirates came in here thinking that they were going to be able to do whatever the fuck they wanted. And these shipwrights are obviously able to manage all their shit no problem. Meanwhile, on the other side of the shipyard, there's like this kid who is polishing a cannon. And this old man just comes up to him and is like, oh, hey, have we gotten a chance to test fire that yet? Why don't we go ahead and do that now? And so the last thing we see is like this cannon flying, shooting a cannonball over, and these guys all just getting the remainder, those who are still standing, getting knocked down. And as the smoke clears, we have a pretty good view of a bunch of these shipyard dudes standing around watching them. And the whole look, there's a guy who's got what looks to be like a really long mohawk. He's got a band-aid on his head and a real goofy like smile and big hands. There's a dude who is just all muscle, totally jacked, tattoo across his chest and over his arm, and he's got brown hair but like a white beard. Then there's the guy who had the hammer, and oh, I'm realizing I thought his eyes were glowing. Those are, I think, sunglasses. And the guy who had said looked like Hawkeye is wearing suspenders, and he has a white bird on his shoulder. I don't know if that's like a dove or what. And the blonde guy has almost what looks like ski goggles on. I'm assuming that those are like meant to be safety goggles, and a denim jacket and a shirt that almost looks like it has the Target symbol on it. Not quite. Just quite an assortment of dudes here. Oh, and we also see the guy who had the saw with his weird nose. You can't see anything else of his face. His collar is pulled all the way up and he has a hat on. So all we see is his weirdly dick-like nose sticking out from between collar and hat. And they essentially are telling all of these pirates who have been laid the fuck out, y'all don't want to fuck with us. It is a bad idea. We are not just shipwrights. We can manage ourselves. Carry out this bullshit with somebody else. You're going to pay us. So, Seraphim says mouse named Tyrannosaurus, who was just amazing. Oh, the mouse is... Okay. I thought you were saying that one of the shipwright guys was named Mouse. And yes, that is the joke. Okay, good. Gus says square Usopp. Indeed. It's a pigeon, says Seraphim. Okay, cool. So we get to see all of this. Then we go back to Luffy and Nami and Usopp. And they get brought to this like kind of cool elevator thingy, which is basically functioning like a lock does, where it closes, the water rises beneath you and it lifts you up, and then they open the thing and, you know, let you out. It's a really one of those ideas that's so simple and it's just really brilliant when you stop and consider it, you know. And Luffy is just taken with all of this. He's just really impressed with it. So they wind up like out in this open area and they see this huge crowd gathered. And Luffy is like, what's the deal? Why is everybody gathered up here? And we find out that the shipwrights are like local celebrities, which makes sense because the shipyard is what that lady had said this whole area became famous for, basically. So if it's so renowned, all the guys who work there being kind of famous would really make a lot of sense. And everybody's just gathered around, delightedly watching the shipwrights, like, picking up the bodies of the dudes that they have laid out and put them on stretchers and carry them out. And I love the fact that there's like one woman who says something about how one of these guys is so handsome. But otherwise, it's almost all dudes who were like, no way, so-and-so is the manliest one. Look at all that muscle. And I was just like, oh, I love this. This is so gay. And they, like, what do you call it? Introduction of all of these guys, I will not remember their names. So apologies, but y'all are probably going to have to help me with that. It doesn't matter right now because we don't get anything with them yet. But it's like clearly Luffy is really excited about the fact that these guys are all so tough and can't wait to meet all of them. Meanwhile, poor Usopp is just capsizing under the weight of this gold. And they're like, yeah, we really need to go and change this over. So we cut from there to Nico, Robin, and Chopper. And I already mentioned that she's bringing him into town and that they're going to, I didn't say this, but they're going to a bookstore, which is what Chopper specifically asked for. And they pass some people with masks. Chopper doesn't realize they're masks. And he's just kind of like, what is the deal with these guys? And he finds a bookstore and gets really excited. And he starts to go in there without Nico Robin. And he looks back over his shoulder and is like, hey, what's wrong? What's taking so long? And we saw somebody walk past Nico in a mask. And we hear them whisper CP9. And it's a long pause on Nico's face. And on the masked face, we can't see any eyes behind that mask of any kind. And Nico just, I keep saying Nico like that's her first name. Robin stops, is sweating, obviously deeply agitated, and comes to a full stop. And later on, Chopper is looking around and cannot find her, doesn't know where she went. And the episode ends with Zorro getting jumped by some dudes who thought that he was asleep. And of course he was, because that's just what he always is, but not asleep enough. And these dudes, I don't know what to make of them, but they are, I'm assuming, pirates. I don't think that they're like from town. And they were not prepared for Zorro. So the fact that Zorro and Sanji got left behind, I should have realized was a signal that we were about to get a fight on the ship because they're the fighters. I didn't pick up on that. But I'm really curious about CP9, and I'm really curious about what the deal is with the masks. Something is up here, you know? So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, this is a pretty fun episode. Or pair of episodes. Thank you, Michael, again, for commissioning these. I'm looking forward to the next one. Let's see. How is this going? So we get the next one Thursday. Okay, cool. So it's once a week from now on. Pretty consistent. Yeah, Water 7 looks like it's going to be interesting. All right, everybody. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Thank you again, Michael and Florian, for doing the booking. Appreciate you all. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.